And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockwood along with you on this Wednesday morning. Just a 6-game NBA slate here tonight for us to dig into. Am I right there or is it an 8-game slate?
8-game
slate. 8-game slate. Sorry. 8-game slate. 8-game slate.
Close.
Yes, the math is fine. You see how I talked about last podcast about not wanting to do the probability of outcomes.
Yep.
I don't even want to count how many.
Game size, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know that guy's voice is that's Dave. Dave, how you doing?
Doing all right, man. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I had a contract, and listen, I will timestamp when we start talking NBA. For all of you who are already the thumbs down over there on YouTube, hold it off. Hold it off. We're gonna get to the good stuff.
We do this late at night just because we have a couple conversations to start the show.
It's been 5.5 years now, 6 years of us doing these shows together and become friends. So I wanted to update. So we're getting the basement finished finally.
Oh yeah,
you did that on your own. I know. I'm not doing it on my own. But I'm also getting the back half of my garage finished to be my office, like to do a studio.
Awesome. Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that.
I had a guy out today doing a walkthrough to give me an estimate. And 3 different times, this guy hit his head on a pipe in my basement.
Did he really?
Each time I said, hey, we got to raise this pipe if we finish the basement. He said, yep. And then turned and walked right. And the third time I was like,
he's going to finish the basement without raising that pipe.
Exactly. The third time I was like, yeah, we really got to raise that pipe. We got to do that. So, as we start this, I have no head trauma. I'm sure he does. There had to have been a concussion in one of them.
That's crazy.
Multiple times. Just
Are you sure you want that dude finishing the basement?
You're right. Like, hey, guy, I mentioned this 3 times. I don't know I feel comfortable with you holding any sort of power tool in my basement.
Right. Hey, pay me. I'll come down to Massachusetts and I'll do it at a discount. All I need is a little bit of YouTube. You know, you buy the spackle and we're good.
Amazing. But nonetheless, that should be in the offing. It's not going to be, I'm not going to have a bar in my garage where I'm going to do random shots in doing videos for a daily fantasy site. But I will nonetheless have a place to now call my own office, which I'm very excited about.
I'm happy for you.
For those of you who don't get that reference, you missed out on some fun times in a previous incarnation of this podcast. But nonetheless, we will talk about this 8-game National Basketball Association slate. We have none other than James Bartholomew Harden III on this slate. That's not actually his name, but I feel like he needs a much more prestigious name as he continues to light the NBA on fire. He is now that aforementioned price tag, Dave. He is $13,000 on DraftKings. We've been very specific about how we play him, when we play him, and the fact that you don't have to. And if you have lineup constructions you're more comfortable with, it's not saying 100% lock, but he's just been so good and so consistent. Has a matchup with the Brooklyn Nets, which has been very kind to us as well. And is at $13K. We can obviously leave him from shooting guard, but I want to get your overall take here. Price point wise, matchup wise, slate wise, early thought here on the early bird. Do you feel that like this is a slate where you maybe underweight the field? To speak more specifically to how lineup construction works these days with MME, do you feel like you might be underweight the field comparatively on James Harden at this price point and in this matchup?
13,000 is still not enough, really. It's not. I mean, look what he's doing, right? He played. Oh, excuse me. We're doing a HelloFresh thing. I got some pork carnitas tacos. They were delicious, and I just stacked them.
Sounds it. Yeah.
Oh my God, they were so good.
You also eat dinner at like 9 o'clock at night, don't you? Like, do you still go that late?
I mean, if you consider my lunch, if you want to consider my like 7 o'clock meal lunch, then sure, yeah. But like we'll get done the show and then I'll have a full meal. I'll go down and make a grilled cheese at like midnight, 12:30.
You used to do the cereal at 2 o'clock in the morning. I used to remember that. Yeah.
I still do every night. Don't miss a night. Don't miss a night. Frosted Flakes right now. It depends. You know, Cinnamon Toast Crunch sometimes. I went on a special cake kick. Like, it doesn't have to be real sugary. It can be anything.
You and Adam Gaze.
Yeah, that's not sugar, man. Booger sugar, maybe. Methamphetamine, bath salts, whatever. I mean, he was tweaked. Man, I've never he was seeing shit in the room that was not in the room.
Well, you saw the taco one, right? The taco re-edit.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. The only other thing I can think of, honestly, is like, is that he has Tourette's or that he has some type of, neurological thing. I've told you, I think I have like a minor form of Tourette's. I'm not being funny. I think I do. You and I've done shows long enough. I think I do. But that to me seemed a little bit different. That to me seemed
different's the right
something.
word.
Yeah. And why I say I think I do it because I've never been diagnosed. I don't really like going to doctors and talking to them. So I'll just go ahead and self-diagnose and self-medicate, right? So with James Harden, he shot 1 for 17 against Orlando. I posed this question to Adam on the deeper dive. I was like, if you knew that Harden was going to shoot 1 for 17, but he'd play 43 minutes, would you play him at that price? And he's like, no, of course not. Right? No, 1 for 17 from 3, that's insane. He shot 1 for 17 and had 75 fantasy points. It's outrageous, man. He had 2 assists the next day, second of a back-to-back, played only 34 minutes, had 78 fantasy points, 57 points on 17 for 33 shooting. It's outrageous. And he did this without Clint Capella. He did this without Chris Paul, without Eric Gordon. The reason I say did this, they won by 18 points. It's wild right now. And now you're talking about no Capella again out for 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, does it really matter if Gordon returns? Does it really matter? No. Chris Paul doesn't have a timeline yet. You're talking about a supporting cast of Austin Rivers, of PJ Tucker. Daniel House couldn't come to an agreement, so they're going to send him back down to the G League. Gerald Green. I mean, this is not exactly a stellar starting lineup. That's why, in my opinion, he's the clear MVP right now, because the supporting cast, despite them winning these games, is terrible.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, Chris Paul shouldn't be back till the end of January, early February. So we got a little bit longer to go to see how high his price point can get. Harden, I mean.
Oh, and that's a fun thing to track. Does he get to 14K? Do we have these string?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Not on DraftKings.
And it'll be intriguing to see what the ownership continues to be. 8-game slate, deep enough here. You have Curry, you have Giannis, you have AD, you have Kevin Durant, you have Kawhi, you have Blake. So there's enough here to maybe spread some ownership around at 13K that Harden may not be as owned as we think he should be. But let's talk point guard specifically. We'll get
Hold
to
on. I wanted to say one more thing.
Sure.
I didn't the other night. I went away from the Harden Davis pairing in a lot of spots, and the reason I did it is because all you saw was everyone wanted to pair Harden with Davis, and I played a lot of cash games where people paired Harden and Davis, and it didn't work out for them because you're forced to play other guys.
Right.
A lot of people were like super stoked on a lot of the value, but really the value wasn't that good. I mean, there were a few guys like Rozier, and he ended up not being good. But he was fine because everyone had him. And then Jaylen Brown was solid. I had some Gordon Hayward. But I had Shelvin Mack too. But then I went away from the whole like Randall or Davis, Harden, and then you have Rozier, Brown, Hayward, and then like 2 more punts.
Yep.
Instead, I went with like a bunch of D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle in it, and it happened to work. There could have been a night where it didn't work. I just didn't feel comfortable enough with the value to go heavy on that. So it really does depend on what you feel comfortable with. And I think 13K for Harden really isn't crazy when you look at just what he's been doing. And by the way, he is 14K on FanDuel.
Yep.
And Davis is 13.7. Like, if you just want a quick, brief idea, Dan, on how far they've pulled away from the pack, I will tell you right now. Giannis is 11.5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Giannis was higher priced than both of them for most of the first couple of months of the year, right? Or at least the deadlocked. KD is 10.4. Curry's 10. Kawhi's 9.8. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy to see that these price points have come that much higher. I mean, yes, James Harden is $5,000 more expensive than Kyrie Irving. That's wild. It's just, and he deserves it. I mean, it's well warranted. It's deserved. No question. When you're posting 70 plus and 30 plus shots every night, you have to get up there, or else everyone is going to play you.
Right. And I think it again, the other day, I made the point in our Slack chat of just it's fun to build a balanced lineup when you have everyone saying you got to play AD and Harden together. So look at the other side of that. Look at what the other options are. And to Dave's point, value, you're taking a shot there. You're taking a value that doesn't typically play, maybe being inserted to the starting lineup. That's great. But does that affect their usage? Does that affect their shot volume? Does that affect, are they now the fifth option on offense? That all affects how good that value is actually going to be. And yes, pairing Harden and AD together and getting a lineup in that you feel comfortable with is great. It's a great feeling because you feel like your upside's 350 points. But finding that balanced lineup that maybe gives you a little bit more upside. I'm pretty sure a balanced lineup won the low stakes GPPs. I'm almost positive they were up around 360 with a very balanced lineup with D'Angelo Russell, as you said, and other pieces. It had no Harden, no AD, because again, you can get away from the high end, low end, the stars and scrubs aspect of it, where the scrubs are volatile, and you have to be aware of that.
If you have 160 combined points, you're feeling really good. But then when you have 100 combined points from the other 6 players,
right,
it's not going to do it. So
exactly right.
That's what it comes down to.
So
sometimes it works, but keep in mind another thing, Dan. This is no longer like you're pairing a 10-5 Westbrook and a 10-7 Harden. No, not. This is a $13,000 Harden and $11,800 Davis. If you were to do that on DraftKings, you have $4,200 per player remaining. If you were to do it on FanDuel, where you have the extra position and more salary cap, you have $4,600 and minimum salaries $3,500. It's not feasible. To me, they could both go for 90 and you'd still have a tough time. I mean, obviously, if that happens, you're also feeling pretty good. But they both went for 80 or so last game, and there were a lot of like actual bad overall lineups with those two in it.
Absolutely. The value plays and those chalk value plays can really make a mess of your lineups when they play the way they typically play, when you get 17 to 24 DraftKings points out of them. Let's go to point guard here. We do have Steph Curry. Donovan Mitchell has stepped in to more of a point guard role with pretty much the entire backcourt injured for the Utah Jazz. Lillard, Kyrie Irving gets a matchup with Toronto here at 8,600. You got Drew, Mike Conley, D'Angelo Russell, the aforementioned, against Houston on the other side at 7,300. Lowry is at 72, and McCollum and Bledsoe sort of round out our 6K. I'll throw Lou Williams in there as well against Utah, which has rounded into form from a defensive perspective over the past few weeks. But what do you got here outside of Harden? Who are you looking at? Who are some of your favorite names?
All right, a few guys to definitely have some interest in. So we keep getting Irving and Lillard here. Irving's probable. He was out last game. I think with Harden right now at that price, and like you look at the other guys, I'll just point it out real quick. You have Harden and excuse me, this is going to be a long show. Davis and I could go down a list. We'll get to him. Even Donnie Mitchell against the Clippers in a good spot. Who else here? A bunch of centers that we're obviously going to have some interest in. I think it's tough to get to Irving here against Toronto, even though I feel like he's the type of guy that in this spot can have a monster game. So I still have interest. It'll be tournament interest, and I do prefer him over Lillard. I like Irving's upside right now over Dame. And if you're, we don't base our plays on blowouts, but there's a much greater chance that Portland, as a 12.5 point favorite, blows out the Cavs, who have been just god awful. Then Boston at home blows out Toronto. So you could really see that game against the Raptors going, deep competitive, deep into the game. And that would make a really solid play for Kyrie Irving. In 2 games against him this year, he's averaging 54 fantasy points. I feel like one of them went to overtime, but I can't remember. Either way, he's been good against them. So I think at 8,600, he's cheap enough for me to say, yeah, Irving is a good play here. Get him 35, 36 minutes or more in a close one. That all looks really nice to me. I don't want to sleep on Curry either. I, like many others, have not been playing a lot of Stephen Curry recently. But, we cannot sleep on him. He's coming off a monster game, not last night, but on Sunday. And he is still a really, really good player, right? And he's facing a New Orleans team that has struggled immensely on defense this season, and they've also struggled to contain point guards, which is surprising given the personnel. So I am on board with Curry here. How much can you get if you're playing Harden? It's a good question. If you're fading Harden, do you want to go to Curry and hope that he can beat him? It's a tough call. But I do really like the matchup. I can tell you that much. I like the spot. We don't have a line because they're still playing right now. But New Orleans has really struggled in this spot, and I would expect Curry to just do a lot of damage, irreparable damage against this New Orleans front court or backcourt. And I don't think he's wildly overpriced at all. He's 10-1 on DraftKings, 10,000 flat on FanDuel. I definitely like Curry there. If you come into the mid-range, though, Russell's prices come back up. I don't hate him at 73. I like him a whole lot more at 6,500. I can tell you that much, but I don't mind him here. You're getting into weird territory because Lou Williams against Utah, his prices come down. I think on dynamic pricing sites, you definitely like him more. 61 on DraftKings, even 65 on FanDuel. I do not like the spot, but it is a price where I'm not opposed to it because he's got 30+% usage and assist rate. So in those 27 minutes or so, you at least know that Lou's going to chuck, that he's going to get opportunities. 19 shots in 30 minutes last game, 28 the game before that. So maybe we will start seeing more run from Lou as the season goes on, as the Clippers try to keep pace. There's not a ton in that mid-range, though. And then in terms of value, I don't exactly know how much you're going to find here, Dan. I think it gets kind of ugly pretty quick. It looks like Dennis Smith Jr. is being heavily shopped in Dallas.
Yep.
Played 27 minutes last game. He's had one decent game since returning from injury. Outside of that,
he's been out sick too. He has some whatever illness. He's questionable for Wednesday. So
yeah, so that too. I mean, it all kind of just compounds and makes it worse. I probably would have a really tough time getting here, actually. Just trying to look at some value to find someone that sticks out. There really isn't anyone. Javon Carter started with Kyle Anderson out. Yep. He played 15 minutes. So I really don't have a problem going back to the same guy that I played on Monday, and that would be Shelvin Mack. The 23 minutes wasn't great, but he handled the ball quite a bit. Got a lot of backup point guard duty, 7 assists, 23 minutes. And I think you can see him get more minutes here as well. So if I'm looking at value right now among all of these guys, it's going to be Shelvin Mack, at least where we stand right now. I prefer him over like Pat Bev against Utah, Javon Carter, who's not going to get minutes, Dennis Smith, who just hasn't been good, and as you said, is sick. Where do you really go here unless you want to say, hey, Ish Smith is back. I'll take a stab at Ish Smith, hope he plays 22 minutes. And even that, I mean, that's a massive risk. It makes no sense. There's really no reason to go there. You're going to be in a tough spot if you're looking for value at point guard unless something opens up.
Yeah, I think you start talking about guys like Alec Burks or Colin Sexton on the same Cleveland Cavaliers team, or you touch on a Dinwiddie and hoping for some upside, or an Alf Payton at 5,700 against Golden State and hope they don't get blown out. But you're sort of grasping at straws. You're hoping for the best and hoping for upside, hoping for ceiling games, even at lower price points here from guys who may not get a ton of run or would be in there in blowouts with guys chucking no matter what. So I do think Sexton and Burks intrigue me a little bit here against Portland. I don't know what the line is on that one. It is a slightly pace-up game for Cleveland. I don't know which of the two I choose, but will be at least two names that I look a little bit further at on Wednesday at some point. Shooting guard, it comes back to Harden, obviously, here at the top. Point guard typically has a little bit more for us, so if you want to play Harden here or at the guard spot on DraftKings, makes total sense. Curry, Mitchell, Luka Doncic is available here. DeRozan is down to 8,100 off 8,500 last time out. Middleton, McCollum, Klay Thompson at 6,500 had his price point drop a little bit in this matchup with New Orleans. Anybody who you haven't mentioned in point guard stand out here at shooting guard?
No one at point guard eligibility, but I like, well, we won't talk about Harden. It's unnecessary. Donovan Mitchell, well, I guess he is eligible at point guard. I like this spot for Mitchell. His prices come up, but you're just getting massive volume. I wasn't there against Detroit, but this one is a lot friendlier. There's no question, right? You got a 222 total, a 2-point spread. significant pace up spot for Mitchell, which we definitely like. And when you look at, let's say, the past month of basketball, this is a Clippers team that has pretty much struggled in every respect. Right? They're playing at a top 10 pace, actually the fourth fastest pace over the last month. But defensively, the Clippers rank 23rd, but they also rank 7th in offensive rating, which is good because they've been good enough on offense to not get blown out with such a bad defense. Mitchell is in a really good spot. You look at his minute totals since Rubio went down: 40, 37, 33, 38, 36. He's going to get huge run in a close game. And is he priced up? He is. And it's kind of crazy to think that you're paying that much for Mitchell. But I think you get 50 plus here. It's definitely a spot where he can give you that. I'm not looking at him as a must play at all. Actually, there are a few other guys that I like, but I do still like Mitchell. I like Klay Thompson, Dan. I think there's a solid spot for Klay Thompson. If you don't want to pay for Curry, but still want exposure to this game, which is where I might find myself. Klay Thompson, you give me 35 minutes, maybe more. He's shooting really well lately, outside of 1 or 2 games, but that happens when you're jacking up as many shots as he is. Look, at 6,500, you're talking about a guy that, just look at his last 6. He's got a 42 in there, a 50 in there, a 56, a 41. I'll take the risk at a 23 or 30 at 6,500. I mean, that's just, I see him being dramatically underpriced in this specific matchup, and I really like it. He might be right now, just in terms of kind of like point per dollar, not as much, I won't say value because he's not cheap.
Sure.
But Klay Thompson is a really, really favorable price here at 6,500. I mean, I could bring up somebody like Joe Ingles, and he left and then came back last game, played 29 minutes. I assume he would have played that 31. And I don't think Ingles is a bad play at 5,900 on FanDuel, obviously small forward eligible, but he sits at 66. I mean, I don't think Ingles is a bad play in a really nice pace up spot, and I'll probably have some, but the ceiling with Klay Thompson is just exponentially higher than Ingles, and I don't think there's any argument there at all.
No, and I've used this word a couple of different times on this pod, but the nuclear option here for Klay is gigantic. Like if you get that ceiling game from him, you can make up almost to a Harden, a typical Harden outing. Like you can get up to 65, 70 DraftKings points when Klay is absolutely on fire.
I mean that's
it's the high end
here, but right. You're not but what you're saying is Joe Ingles is never going to do that.
Right, exactly right. And part of this offense in this matchup, I think that the ceiling is legitimate here for Klay, whereas Ingles, I think his legitimate ceiling never hits. Like I just don't think he has that sort of extra level in him. I'm really intrigued by Thompson on a different team. Like I would love to see what Klay Thompson does as a first or second option on a regular basis. I know that he's
regressed significantly.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. But I think that's
not because he's not good, because he's a really good shooter. But to have guys like Curry and KD around you, and to be fair, Klay Thompson was still very good before Kevin Durant.
Yep.
Came to Golden State. But if he was a number 2, I think he'd be fine. But you can't have him as your number 1. Like he's not a good ball handler. Right. If he was a number 2, I think Klay Thompson would be perfectly fine. But if you stuck him on a team and you're like, we're going to build it all around Klay, I think you'd be in trouble just because that's not who he is. And he has, world-class skill sets, but ball handling and facilitating and court vision like a regular point guard, that's not at the top of his list.
All right, let's any value here? Any guys that cheap may fill out a roster or give you at least some leverage to get up to the higher price guys?
There isn't much here yet either. Hopefully we get some injury news. That would open things up. I mean, if you wanted to look at like Evan Fournier dude, it's ugly. And I can tell you Garrett Temple's going to play 35 minutes or so and
score 15 DraftKings points. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. If you're lucky. I do think Doncic is fine if Dennis Smith sits out. Drew Holiday against the Warriors. I love Drew Holiday, and I love how I used this said remarkably consistent he's been. But Elfrid Payton being back has definitely taken some of the shine away, just because you're gonna see those games where the assist totals just do not exist, and his potential assist, his opportunities have come down as well. And he's taken 46 shots over his last 2 games. Does that continue? It's so hard to say. Against the Warriors, I'll have some Holiday in tournaments, but I think I'll end up on more Clay and probably even more Donovan Mitchell here, knowing that if Mitchell shoots less than 20 times, he's either hurt or the game is a complete blowout by halftime. I just don't see any way he doesn't.
All right, let's continue on to a small forward here where we have Giannis as our most expensive at $11K flat on DraftKings. You do have Durant. You have Kawhi Leonard at $9,600. It's just not a price point I'll feel comfortable paying for Kawhi at any point this season. Luka Doncic is $8,400. DeRozan at $81 is a bit intriguing to me. Gallinari and Tobias Harris are right next to each other for the Clippers at $74 and $7,100 respectively. Aaron Gordon, Middleton, Jason Tatum coming off a very solid game against the Brooklyn Nets. He put up 54.25 DraftKings points, and in hindsight made so much sense as a play in that contest when everybody was flocking to Rozier and Brown and the likes. What do you got at small forward? Anybody pique your interest the most?
So by the way, if you're really desperate for some cheaper guys, small forward or shooting guard, you're gonna, unless we get injuries, you're gonna be looking at guys like Reggie Bullock and Joe Harris and Etuan Moore, guys like that. God, that's ugly. Like, I just have no desire to go there. They all need everything. All the stars have to align for them to have big games, and that's just, not really where I want to be. I think the interesting conversation here, though, Dan, is Kevin Durant, right? $9,800 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's 10-4. Like I said, he on FanDuel he is what, 3,600 less than Harden, and
right.
100% rightfully so. I mean, am I wrong? Rightfully so. Kevin Durant is an all-world, one of the best basketball players in my lifetime, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's not. He doesn't have 47% usage rate.
Well, it's also it's amazing to see, and somebody in chat was talking about, or maybe it was on Twitter, about Harden and Harden drawing fouls. Durant doesn't take a lot of free throws, or hasn't been this season. He's been in single digits and around 6, 7, 8 over the past 5, 10 games, and that is such a huge difference in those games. And he doesn't have to. He has the supporting cast, obviously. He doesn't have to get to the free throw line and do that sort of work, but Harden's getting an extra 15 to 18 points at the free throw line.
He is. There's no question. And that's a lot of points, especially, the big thing too. It's not like 18 free throw attempts for Andre Drummond or Ben Simmons.
Right.
It's, 16 to 19 free throw attempts for a guy that can shoot 18 for 18 at the line. But also consider this, like, okay, let's see. When was Curry out? Because Curry was out for a little stretch there. Remember, we were all playing Kevin Durant. So Curry was out from the 10th of November to the 29th of November. He came back at in the first game of December. So you look at Kevin Durant from the 10th of November to the 29th. Ready for this? It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 games. He attempted double-digit free throws in 8 of them.
Jeez.
That's a lot, right? So he attempted double-digit free throws in 0 of his last 10 games.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So you're right. He's not getting to the line like you would expect, and a lot of that has to do with, he just doesn't have the ball as much.
Right.
He just doesn't have the ball as much. He still has the ball more than most players in the league, but not as much as Harden, who has it every possession. So, yeah, I think Kevin Durant at sub 10K is still a pretty fascinating play against a Pelicans team that you want to talk about, what power forwards have done again, or what small forwards have done against the Pelicans this year. I will tell you, they're averaging the second most points on the season. They're averaging the second most rebounds. They are averaging the third most assists. This is all small forwards against the Pelicans. They're averaging the most steals, and they're averaging the most field goal attempts. They're averaging the third most, free throw, 3-point attempts. What about free throws? Third most free throw attempts.
There you go.
And efficiency. Efficiency. Can you guess?
Third, second.
Oh, third. Not bad.
Nice.
Third. I mean, they're horrible against it. Now they've mixed things up with Peyton back, so maybe they'll bolster it a little bit. Still a bad defense. I want to have, if you're playing 150 lineups, I think you want to have a little bit of Durant. But do you still take the savings on him over Harden and hope Harden only goes for 60? It's still a very risky proposition, because in that you're still saying, okay, well, Durant still needs to have a big game, and he's had as many disappointing games as good games recently. It's tough. It's catch-22.
It goes back to the conversation of what's the possibility versus the probability of something happening, and is it probable that Durant does X more than his projected total, and how often does that happen?
And you're not always not playing a guy because it's not probable that he does that.
Right.
But if the probability is so, like, if it's such a low probability this happens, then it's such a high probability that Harden goes for 70.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the risk profile BS? And like I say BS because my brain doesn't go there, but the idea of how many lineups you're playing, what risk you want to take on in those lineups. And if you're playing large field GPPs, you have to be shooting for first place. You can't be trying to min cash large field GPPs. And in doing so, you need to go for those ceiling games. So if you believe Durant is in line for a ceiling game that gets you past Harden lineups at lower ownership, then that makes sense. But I just still don't see it. I don't see the numbers all coming together to make it worthwhile. I think that I'll stay away from KD here. I don't see much upside. Well, I see plenty of upside. I don't see upside to get past Harden or get past Anthony Davis as an upside play here. What about the rest of small forward? We have Kawhi, we have Doncic, Tobias, and Danilo Gallinari. Aaron Gordon has a $7K price tag coming off back-to-back 40-plus point outings on DraftKings. What do you got overall here in the rest of small forward?
Well, not much. I mean, really not much. I guess we have to talk about a few of these guys, don't we? So, remember I'd say if you're a masochist, if you like, in self-inflicted pain, Royce O'Neal is your guy. And then he goes out and draws 32 fantasy points. And then he draws 34.8. And I'm like, all right, well, I look like an idiot. But then he went and Royce O'Neal the next game. 9 fantasy points. 0 shots in 27 minutes. 0. Like, I'm not saying Royce O'Neal is expected to average 0 shots per 36.
Right.
But seriously, it's more likely that he has these 9 to 14 fantasy point games than 30 plus. It's just so much more likely. Look at his player profile. I mean, what does he do? What does he do? He doesn't do anything. So I don't know. I think the call here is to stay away. When he was dirt cheap, like 3,300, 3,400, then yeah, you can make that argument, because even 18, it's like your night's not necessarily over. 9 fantasy points at 4,500. You don't have much of a chance to have anything break your way at that point. So, I just prefer to stay away. Now, you have a lot of these guys that are decently priced, but they're facing really tough teams in slow games that I'm just not really appealed. Like, okay, the Clippers, small forwards, I have no problem at 7K plus on DraftKings passing on them. I don't think you do either, right? Gallinari 74 on FanDuel. Harris is 76 at small forward, power forward, respectively. I'm really not super excited about getting there. I think Al-Farouq Aminu is perfectly fine. I wish he was a little bit less expensive,
right?
But you don't have a whole lot of options. So Aminu at, what is he, 5,300? It's not a crazy play. The blowout risk is a concern, but what are you going to do on this slate? And that's why I mentioned earlier Joe Ingles. I think if you're playing Ingles, he makes way more sense at small forward, right? This is a rough position. top to bottom, which maybe Durant will see more ownership because of that. I don't think that'll be the case. I think people will just punt and hope to get something out of guys like Temple or Jonathan Isaac or maybe even Royce O'Neal. But I'm pretty sure everyone's off the Royce O'Neal mobile. So that's probably that ship is likely sailed. Or Reggie Bullock, as we talked about. I'm not endorsing these guys. I'm just giving you an idea of really how bad it is. And I think that will probably, Dan, it's almost certainly going to bring us to guys like Ingles. I don't see how it doesn't, because I don't want to play Kawhi here. I don't want to pay for Giannis against Memphis. Second of a back-to-back doesn't worry me, but I'd just rather go elsewhere. Yes, I'd rather pay an extra $2,000 for Harden, or $800 for Davis, which seems like a pretty good bargain, right? And then, do you play like a PJ Tucker and hope that he gets 40 minutes in regulation, which is very much a possibility? And if he does that, can he give you like 0.7 fantasy points per minute, which would be solid, but oftentimes he's not even capable of doing that. I mean, this guy on the season, on the year, not just over his last however many games, but on the season, he's averaging 0.60 DraftKings points per minute. That's bad. You need 40 minutes.
You need 40 minutes, and you don't typically get that. It's a tough sliding down here on the cheap end. The guys who, at least names I double clicked on, guys who I maybe double checked in on, were Damari Carroll and Terrence Ross. So that tells you all you need to know about what I was doing down here on the cheaper end of the pool. And they're not even that cheap. $5K and 4,800 isn't getting you hard.
No, like not cheap at all.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you're sort of struggling there.
Oh, Carroll, by the way, shot 2 for 15 at 34 fantasy points last game. But those are like anomalous performances. The 14 rebounds.
When I think, and RHJ is probably back here, right? Wasn't he on pace to be back and then sat out?
Questionable last game. Let's see. Probably, yeah.
So that takes some shine off that as well. Power forward, you have AD, Giannis, KD. You've already talked about Leonard. Blake is eligible here at 9,200. LaMarcus Aldridge, who is at 8,300, had 52 points his last time out on 11 of 17 shooting, 6 of 6 from the line, double-double, 28 points, 10 rebounds. Harrell is here. He's been fun to play this season, mainly because I enjoy watching him play basketball. I don't often get into that, but
it's fun to watch. He really is.
Yeah, so when I roster a guy like him, it is fun to tune into the games and root for him, because I just love the way he plays. What do you got here? Top end, middle, cheap? What are some of the names you're looking at power forward?
If Harrell's going to keep playing 34 minutes a game, even against Utah, I might have a little bit of interest, because he's 7,200. But if he's playing 34 minutes, that doesn't make it crazy, right? It really doesn't. I mean, you're talking about a guy that this year is averaging 1.25 fantasy points per minute, right? So at 34 minutes, just on average, that's 42.5 fantasy points per game if you're playing 34 minutes. Now, you can take the matchup and say, all right, well, you could probably lower that per minute rate to 1.17 across 34 minutes. You're looking at 40 fantasy points, but then you're also hoping that he gets to 34 minutes, and that's kind of the thing. In tournaments, though, I'm not opposed to it. Again, and I said it, I forget who it was earlier in the show, but the reason is that Harrell can still give you the 50 plus here, which at 7,200 is solid. And another big thing about this game is, while I don't love the total, obviously I don't love, well, actually 222 total is not bad. I don't like the pace down spot as much for Carroll. I like that there's a 2-point spread and we should see the game stay competitive. So if again, 32, 34 minutes from Harrell makes him a reasonable play. It really does. You just have to hope those minutes don't disappear out of nowhere. And I can't tell you whether they're going to or not. I don't know. I can't tell you. Obviously, I have no idea. I would like to think that they don't, but we have no idea. We've seen what Doc Rivers does. Anthony Davis, I have Anthony Davis projected for almost 10 fewer fantasy points than Harden. And, the other day, I think I had him a point or two separated. Davis, probably going to be tough for me to get to today. And it's kind of simple. Harden is facing the Brooklyn Nets at home, but there's nobody else on this team. They're 4-point favorites because of Harden. Seriously, let me ask you, if you took Harden off this
Jesus
team,
Christ, I have no idea.
And they had the roster they have right now, the healthy roster, so no Capella, Gordon, no Chris Paul, right? How many games does this team win the rest of the year fielding a starting lineup of Austin Rivers, we'll say Gerald Green or James Ennis, Daniel House isn't even there anymore, so we'll say Gary Clark, right? Or Ennis, of course, PJ Tucker, and Nene or Marcus Chris. How many games do you win?
Rest of season, there's about 40 games left. Yeah, they're about halfway through.
So Harden's played 40 games. I don't know if he's missed any. Let's assume he hasn't. Let's say there's 42 games left.
42 games left. They win 5 to 7 games. I genuinely believe it.
I don't think that's hyperbolic at all.
No, that's a genuine take. You know what happens if Harden disappears, he gets time warped into a different. They bring back Melo. That's what they would do. They let Carmelo Anthony hero ball for 3. It's bad. Their roster's terrible, and you made the point about Harden. He's your MVP right now. Now there's half a season left. Plenty can happen.
If the season ended today,
yes, exactly, hands down.
And you know why too?
Hands down.
I'm not huge on the idea that they factor wins into it all that much, but I guess it is its most valuable player, right? But with Harden, it's so much easier because if you were to say Stephen Curry, say it was this year, well, could that make sense? Sure, it could, but you have Klay Thompson, you have Kevin Durant. I know Dre's not shooting well, but Draymond Green is a great defensive anchor. You have a very good team there with a lot of depth. If you said Giannis, and look, if Giannis won it, fine, he's phenomenal, but Harden's pulled away. Right? You say, okay, there's still decent players like Bledsoe and Middleton and Malcolm Brogdon, Rookie of the Year, which he shouldn't have won, but still Rookie of the Year and playing really well. Good basketball team, right? With Harden, he is propelling this team to victories night in and night out.
Yes, sir.
With literally no one. And yes, Clint Capella is a good player, but Clint Capella, we know, does not create his own shot. We know he relies on Harden to get him easy buckets, and obviously get some putback opportunities on offensive rebounds and such. But the Rockets are 4th in a tough Western Conference. They were in 14th place not more than a month ago. They lose, 2 core players to this team, now a 3rd, and they're still blowing teams out. I just don't see how you can make any argument that Harden isn't that guy. It's not like he's shooting 30 times and they're losing, right? If that was the case, 70 fantasy point games, okay, well, he just has a massive heap of volume, which would still be impressive, but not nearly as impressive.
What do we got for the rest of power forward? Anybody news-wise that you are keeping your eye on or in a spot that you like? Or is this just a position that you feel is maybe more top-heavy than you'd prefer?
If you're not getting to Davis, I don't mind Julius Randle. I broke this down in depth in the deep dive the other day. You can check it out on awesomemode.com if you want. And if you want to get a free month, you're going to have 50% off your first month. Early bird, right, Dan? Promo code early bird?
Yep, sir.
Yeah. So use the promo code early bird. A lot of awesome content. Dan might have mentioned it already in the show, and I tuned out, which is
I did not. You didn't miss it. Okay. You didn't miss it.
You'd have done the same if I'm on the other end. It's just
yeah, that's absolutely
right. It really is. But from the article that I write, it's super comprehensive, and Adam does it every other day. I do it every day. He's not doing it. I do it 4 days a week. I think he does it 3 days a week. No, I do it 3. Sorry.
I was going to say.
What am I talking about?
Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted.
Awesome-o Alex Baker himself. He has his stuff, his rankings, the lineup builder. The ownership projections are really, really helpful. A lot of stuff. So 50% off your first month. You can check it out. And what I was saying about Randall is he played, even with Mirotic back in that first game, Randall played 34 minutes. Then he played 33 minutes in that Clippers game, which I really liked him. And a lot of people did. Because they were playing Harden and Davis, you couldn't really get to him. And he wasn't the reason you lost if you didn't have him, but he still had a very solid game. Mirotic in that second game back then played 17 minutes, right? I'd have to go back, see how much had to do with foul trouble. But fact remains, I expect Randall to continue seeing around 32 to 34 minutes a game, because what you're seeing is actually Alvin Gentry closed the game out with Mirotic at the 3, Randall at the 4, and Davis at the 5. But that was really the only time they played together. It was a 5-minute stretch. Aside from that, all of Randall's minutes outside of that 5-minute stretch came with either one of Davis or Mirotic off the court. And that's all that matters, because he's still been very productive when it's just one of them out there with him. And he's still $7,500 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's $7,800. He is center eligible. But hey, this is not the worst matchup. It's going to be a fast-paced game. And assuming you can't fit in Davis with Harden, which I wouldn't even try, really, I don't think it's worth it, especially given the lack of value.
Yep.
To me, Randall seems like a really solid play at what I still think is a discounted price.
I'm going to say it again. I think building lineups in a variety of ways throughout the day, and this is not to say build your lineups at 4 o'clock, lock them in, and walk away. A lot of NBA news breaks from 6 to 7. You need to be around to do lineup tinkering, re-crunching, whatever it might be. Build balanced lineups. Take Harden and Davis out of your player pool. Just take them out. And run some crunches, run some, builds, use the lineup builder, just see where you get and see what the other names are, and start to open the mind to that you don't need to have both of them or either of them in your lineup. With that said,
you don't even have to, I think it's I think it's a very good idea, but you don't even have, you don't have to take them out of your player, but set a cap, set exposures.
Absolutely.
And you can see right there what some of these lineups look like without, obviously both, but without. And what you were going to,
that's my rudimentary way of using Cruncher is by just removing people and just seeing what it, well, to be honest, and I think there are a lot of people who dabble in Cruncher, and for those of you who follow Josh Engelman, who is content director here at Awesemo, he has a video over there on Awesemo's YouTube page. He has 2 of them on Fantasy Cruncher. A good friend of Lafayette, Manny, does a lot with Fantasy Cruncher. Like, there are people out there who are much more skilled in that world than I, definitely. But there are ways to just see what you could get to without those 2 guys in. To Dave's point, you can get those other lineups and just start to see it. And a guy like Julius Randle might pop a little, might be somebody who you see, and then you start to think of lineup construction a little bit differently and what you want to get to and where balance might be more important in your lineup construction, or just contrarian might just be a different way to create your lineup on any given night. Any cheap guys here at Power Forward? Anybody that is maybe saving us some cash to get to a Harden or to an AD?
Before I cut you off rudely a minute ago, you were saying, with that said, I know what you were going to say. You're going to say Harden could easily be in the winning lineup in the top 20.
Exactly.
I'm paraphrasing what you would have said.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean you can't see what things look like.
Exactly.
And I don't think that's crazy at all. To see, look at what the projected points is, because it's all slate dependent too. A lot of times I'll see people jam in a Harden or a pairing with Harden and Davis or another guy. And it's like the slate just doesn't set up right for it, and the risk outweighs what would seem to be a lower reward when you have to fit him with the PJ Tuckers and the Reggie Bullocks. To me, the odds of Harden having the monster game and Bullock and Tucker and all of those cheap guys having serviceable games even is going to be tough on a night like this. But I still think you can fit Harden. Fitting both of them is nuts. So yeah, we talked about Randall and Harrell. I think both of them are very solid. Jaren Jackson, the daily disclaimer when it comes to Jaren Jackson, we never really have any idea what we're going to get with this guy.
Yep.
But I am interested to see what Bickerstaff continues to do with his lineup. So if you looked at the last game, for the first 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, it devolved into a pretty wicked blowout. So the bench got emptied, but it was Jaren Jackson out there with Conley, Shelvin Mack, J. Michael Green, and Garrett Temple, and some Justin Holiday at some points. But Marc Gasol never came back in. The game before that, Bickerstaff actually closed with Jim Michael Green at the 3 and Jackson at the 4 and Gasol at the 5. So that's kind of interesting there. But because of the blowout, because they were down so much at the end of the third, it's really tough to see what we're going to get. I still expect Jaren Jackson to get around 30 minutes if he stays out of foul trouble. He's still affordable. in a spot against Milwaukee where I expect the game to stay close. Strictly a tournament play. You really just cannot trust the guy in cash. If he falls below 5K, I might have more interest to just play him everywhere. But until then, I won't. Draymond Green, 6,400. Yeah, his shooting has been dreadful, but the guy still offers upside elsewhere. He's at a discount. He's still going to get the minutes in this game. I don't think Draymond Green's a crazy play whatsoever. And, outside of the couple guys we mentioned at the top, you're not going to have just a wealth of talent at the position. It's going to have a tough time getting up to Davis. So you probably will have to make some sacrifices. And I think you can do it with guys like Dre or Jackson, not value, but a lot cheaper than the guys at the top. And look, Dre can still give you the 10-10-10 triple-double on DraftKings, which is real nice with that 6-point bonus.
The name I will throw out there as somebody that I randomly might roster at 3,500. Omri Caspi. You mentioned Temple before, the minutes he's going to play. Milwaukee Bucks give up what NBA most 3-point attempts. Now the opponent percentage is mid-tier on made 3-pointers there. But with the injuries for Memphis, got a little bit more run last time out. He's still 3,500. I might take a flyer on Omri Caspi here at small forward or power forward to try to get some savings. So,
all right. I got one as well. The one value guy I wanted to talk about here. Again, not fun, but your value is not going to do you many favors here.
You really like Myers Leonard, don't you? No, I'm okay. Go ahead. Who are you going to say?
That's not true. It's Gary Clark.
Oh, all right. Sure.
Well, look,
it's not
first
fun.
of all, no, not at all. Now, warning against Nene and Hilaria, or Nene and Marcus Chris. Hopefully, everyone heeded those warnings. Most people weren't considering them anyway. But really, the upside there was both of them play like 18, 20 minutes, and then maybe Hartenstein would have played 8 minutes at the 5. But Chris played 7 minutes. It was terrible, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you just watch any of these games and you watch Chris play, it's pretty obvious that Mike D'Antoni does not want to play him. And he doesn't want to play Nene for 20-plus minutes either unless he has to. So you could see some small ball Tucker at the 4 or at the 5. Brooklyn plays pretty small brand of basketball at the center. If Hollis Jefferson's out there, you'll see more of that for all the time that Ed Davis or both Ed Davis and Jared Allen aren't out there. And Ed Davis isn't really your big, huge, hulking traditional center anyway. Gary Clark played 26 and a half minutes last game. He was removed with about 5 minutes left in the fourth. That game was a blowout. Maybe he would have closed. I don't think – I mean, I know Chris would not have closed. No chance. Maybe Nene would have, but I don't think that's the case either. I highly doubt it would have been Hartenstein, who saw a grand total of 7 minutes, and 4 of them came in the end of the game with just complete blowout. I think it makes sense to assume that Gary Clark could get upwards of 30 minutes here. So you could do worse. You could definitely do worse, even though he's a low per minute guy. He's basically free. And if you're going to play any of those cheap guys, at least play the one that is pretty certain to get minutes.
All right, let's close it out with some centers here. And as Dave said, you do get the deep dive from him Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Obviously, Wednesday coming up here. So you get the deep dive, and then you get the deeper dive at 5 p.m. NBA Strategy Show is at 9:15. You get Adam and you get Josh for that. You get the deep dive again, deeper dive, I should say, at 5 p.m. YouTube. And then you get Live Before Lock with Spags and or Josh and Ed Fear, bringing you up to lock with their favorite plays of the day, answering your questions as well over there on YouTube, Twitch, and on Periscope. So you can get to talk to them across those different platforms. Davis, Griffin eligible here at center, but we have Vucevic at 8-9. Andre Drummond on the other side of that one is at 8-7. Rudy Gobert against the Clippers, which is a spot we've gone to for centers of late, is at 85. Nurkic back below 8K at 7,900 against the Cavaliers. And let's see who else we got here. Gasol with a Q tag, suffered an elbow injury in Monday's game against Houston, so that could make some room for JaMychal Green, as discussed, maybe a power forward there. What do we got? What do you got at center? Who are some of the names you want to hone in on here?
All right. Well, center's usually pretty deep. It's not much different today either. You have a few quality options here at the 5. If it depends if you want to pay a premium too. It's going to make a big difference. So at the top, I think Vooch is going to be someone at 8,900 that I'll probably land on a decent amount. I'm really not worried too much about the matchup with Andre Drummond here. And look, the one thing that sucks about Vooch is that on a good night, he plays 35 minutes. On a bad night, he plays, well, let's just say a bad night when it's a close game, he could play like 31, 32 minutes. But I'd put him around 34 here. That's the only thing that sucks, because if Vooch was averaging like 36 minutes per game, man, that would be totally different. Consider this. On the season, DraftKings points per game, 1.49, right? Across 36 minutes, it's like a 54 fantasy point average. That's how good he's been. I do like Vooch here. I wish he was getting more run, but he's still, he's sub 9K, and I think that makes it a little bit more palatable. 92 on FanDuel, where they price centers through the roof, is also not bad. But let's talk about Rudy Gobert for a second. This is a really solid spot. I really like Rudy Gobert here. On FanDuel, where he's 99, the most expensive center, I don't see myself getting there. But 85 on DraftKings, how do you get away from that, right? He's 200 cheaper than Drummond. He's only 400 cheaper, or he's 400 cheaper than Vooch, 700 cheaper than Griffin, and I like him more than Griffin, $200 more than LaMarcus Aldridge. It's really, really a favorable spot. Rudy Gobert, since Rubio went down, and it doesn't affect him 1-for-1, obviously, but they need their best players on the court. 39 minutes, 36, 32. That was a big-time blowout. 40 and 36. Huge minutes, huge rebounding totals. He's not a great scorer because he doesn't get the shots and he just cleans up around the rim. You're looking at like 8 to 10 shots, hopefully. But the guy converts 65% of those field goals attempts into field goals, and just everything else he does as a shot blocker. He's been facilitating a little bit more, and obviously as a rebounder, makes Gobert a really nice play at 8,500. 99 is a bit crazy. Nurkic, is there blowout concern? Of course there is. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been so bad, man. And you look at unless you're facing the Lakers, and then anyone can win. But you look at these losses: lost by 28 to Houston, lost by 16 to New Orleans, lost by 8 to Indy, so that's not as bad. But then lost by 35 to New Orleans, lost by 26 to Utah, lost by 25 to Miami. It's crazy, right? I could go back even further. You're looking at 34-point losses and more. They just get crushed every day. But Nurkic has fallen below 8K on DraftKings, which means that there's no doubt I'm going to be considering him, even at 8.8 on FanDuel, but 7.9 on DraftKings. Man, I like that. Last game was disappointing. Second end of a back-to-back, 4 fouls again. Expect him to get over 30 minutes if it's competitive, and 7,900 for a guy that has just been so dominant in the minutes that he gets. You have a high ceiling there. But at the top, Rudy Gobert right now is my top guy, say above that 79K price range.
You think with Capella out, Jarrett Allen has any upside here, coming off a very high 19.4 block, 12 rebound outing against Boston last time out?
It's definitely possible. He's been really volatile too, but I don't hate the $5,600 price tag. I mean, he's no riskier than Jaren Jackson, right? So I don't, or I should say no less risky, right? They're
right.
They're both risky, put it that way. they're both the same price. I don't think it's crazy. I mean, Marc Gasol went out there against a shit heap of centers and had 18 fantasy points in 25 minutes, but I'm still pretty convinced that he's not healthy. No, I don't think it's a crazy call on Jarrett Allen whatsoever. And from a value standpoint, with Hollis Jefferson back, Ed Davis, you're not going to expect him to split the center minutes. He didn't last game, by the way. He only got 14 minutes because Jarrett Allen was just playing really well, and Kenny Atkinson would have been dumb to not give him the minutes. And it only makes sense. Mirotic as a tournament play, I think he's small forward on FanDuel, and now he's power forward center on DraftKings. But down to 5,500, another colossal risk. There's no question. 58 on FanDuel. But I don't expect 17 minutes to be an issue here again. And if it's not, if you get 27 minutes or so from Mirotic, I don't think it's outlandish to think that he could have a solid game here. looking at last game that he played, he had 2 personal fouls to start. So he only played 5 minutes on his first rotation. So that didn't help. He probably lost like another 4 or so minutes. And then, okay, so that was the only foul trouble that really mattered. And then the game blew out. So I would definitely give him more than 17 minutes. I'm not expecting a huge game from him, but that's still a cheap cost, and maybe he'll play more alongside or more at the 3, which would give him more minutes. You have anybody at center that you like?
Well, I do think you mentioned guys up top that I'll have a bit of between Gobert and Nurkic. I have to ask this question. I mentioned J. Michael Green obviously has the power forward eligibility, but if Marc Gasol cannot go, do we have a moment here where none other than Joakim Noah makes an entrance into 2019 DFS?
This is interesting. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this. First of all, Marc Gasol has played through a lot of injuries, and I think some of them more severe than he's let on.
But they want to trade him.
Right. And this one seems a little bit, he's actually has to go through more testing. He said he lost feeling in his hand. So could have something to do with
I'm not a doctor, but that's not good.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, maybe pinched nerve or something? I don't know. It's not good. You're right. So the question is, Joakim Noah. Do we consider rostering Joakim Noah if Marc Gasol is out? And I think the answer has to still be a definitive no. If I thought that he was going to get a significant run, then I would consider it. But I don't, man. I think you'd see Ivan Rabb, who was just called up, get like 10 minutes here. You can play Jaren Jackson at the 5 if you need him to. You know, there's no real inside presence for Brooklyn or quality, or for Milwaukee, or a quality rebounder and down around the rim that scares you that much. So you could play guys like J. Michael Green, move him put him play most of his minutes at the 4, and Jaren Jackson, and even some, like I said, Ivan Rabb. So I think Noah's minutes probably go up, probably gets around, I don't know, 20, but he's not even minimum salary. I mean, the guy is 3,800. So make of it what you will, but to me, that's a pretty scary proposition. Even if he starts, I'm thinking 18 minutes. You could do worse, but no, I think it'll be a tough time getting there.
All right. Had to ask the question. 10K or above.
It's a pretty fair question.
10K or above, Curry, Giannis, AD, or Harden?
You know it, man. Harden.
Yep. Ride or die.
But I do think Curry's interesting here. He really is. Even Curry or Durant, one of them, I know it sounds like I'm copying out, but one of Curry or Durant is probably going to have a really big game in this matchup. I love this spot against the Pelicans. You
also mentioned Clay. I mean, honestly, but that's
right,
sort
and
of
that's probably why that's probably what I'll do. Get Golden State exposure. It's not Curry, it's not Durant, but it's still a guy, like as you pointed out, that does have a very high ceiling when he gets cooking.
Yeah, and I may have overstated slightly, but the ceiling's still high. Just a tad. I mean, I love when Clay shoots. I just think it's an awesome thing to watch. I mentioned Harrell before. Clay Thompson is one of those guys who when he's hot is must-see viewing for NBA fans. All right. So you find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find me at Dan Stratford. Of course, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Dave has your deep dive. You can get that by using the promo code EARLYBIRD and getting 50% off your first month on those monthly subscriptions over there at Awesemo.com. Adam has you Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday on those write-ups. You get EMAC and Adam on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for the podcast. You get me and Dave every Monday, Wednesday, Friday right here on none other than the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.